Hello, everybody. It's Professor Parish, and we are entering the home stretch of this class. Exciting, right? As you'll probably notice, week 13, we did not have a video, and I'm going to post this video a little early to give you all time to be thinking about paper number 4, which is our last paper in the class. So, I want to show you all, we're going to talk about the guidelines for paper 4, about do's and don'ts, examples, tips, how to get the paper started. We're going to talk about the outline and kind of about how the rest of the class is going to shape up from here on in. So exciting, right? I'm on our course homepage right now, and I'm going to scroll down. Hopefully you all have been taking advantage of the video links that are being put up. I'm going to put the link for week 14 here, just kind of with a little announcement saying we didn't have a video for week 13, but I'm going to go ahead and post week 14 early, just to give you guys a heads up on it. And then I'm going to scroll down here. The MLA citation presentation is here, in case if you need to download it. It's only been downloaded 32 times, so hopefully you have it saved on your computer. If not, please feel free to download it. We will definitely be doing a lot with MLA these last couple of weeks in our class. And I'm going to scroll down here to week 14. All right. So, for week 14, you'll have your discussion forum, there's a scavenger hunt, and your thesis that will be due. And then obviously looking at the Cengage handbook. Now, probably up until now, I know we've not done a lot with the new Cengage handbook. It's mainly been a resource for MLA that you have had to be able to use. And to be honest, up until these last couple of weeks, most of the Cengage handbook readings have probably been review for you. If you took English 121 here at SIC, you probably read similar passages in the handbook that we used to use for 121. So, starting with this week, the synthesizing sources, definitely check out this section. It's only 6 pages. It's not crazy, but it will talk about sources, and it will start kind of giving you more information about MLA, things like that. So I'm going to click on paper 4 guidelines. I'm glad to see some people. Okay, so step 1 is to decide which genre that you want to focus on. You can focus on more than one genre. I'm not going to limit you, but ideally you want to pick, stick with fiction, stick with poetry, stick with drama. You can maybe cross over too. For example, sometimes I've had students choose a paper where they're looking at adaptations. So for example, one of the students in this class talked to me today, and we were talking about Rocky Horror Picture Show, and I have had a few students choose that topic in the past. One student took the original 1970s film adaptation, which would be a screenplay, which falls into the drama category, and they talked about how the 1970s Rocky Horror was adapted into both the live action 2016 version and the Glee version that appeared on television. So looking at screenplays and similar genres, but how they were drastically different from the original to the newer versions. And so you can do something like that. Step 2 is to decide what you want to focus on. Here's where you have all your options. There are so many different directions you can go with this paper. So many different ones. The key is that your paper has to have something to do with literature. Something to do with it. I will tell you that every semester I have a student that tries to recycle a paper from another class for this paper, and it does not work. This is a very unique assignment for English 122. So, as an example, I have had 2 papers in the last 2 years, actually, where a student wrote a paper on the effects of smoking. I don't know why that topic, but it's happened twice. And they tried to use that topic for paper 4. No, that topic will not work because it has nothing to do with literature. Now, one of the students ended up just changing their topic. They were like, oh, okay, I'll find something different. The other one ended up keeping the smoking topic. However, they put a twist on it. They looked instead at how fiction has portrayed smokers since the 1980s. That's what they focused on. So they kind of did in the 1980s when Camel and Marlboro were doing a lot of extensive ads and were starting to be called out on how smoking was bad. They took those characters that smoked in books that were anti-heroes or heroes and then compared them to how now we often see smokers as villainous characters because of it's trying to represent kind of that toxic toxicity that these characters are presenting to themselves via smoking. So it was a good paper. It ended up being good, but they took a topic that they were familiar with and had wrote on before and just kind of cultivated it into this new paper that looked at that same topic through a literary lens. That you can do that too. Your paper just has to have something to do with fiction or poetry or drama. If it does not involve literature in any sense of the word, it will not work for this paper and you will fail it. Please don't do that. I just want to tell you up front because every semester I have a student that tries to pass off a topic from another class and it simply just won't work for this paper. It has to be something unique and new. So here are some options to help you kind of get a sense of what you can do with this paper. Like I said, you can go so many different ways, but here are some that I've seen in the past that have worked out really well. If you really want to look at an author or a poet or a playwright in depth for this last paper and kind of talk about how their style has changed and developed over time, that is a good option. I've seen probably 4 papers in the last 2 years on Stephen King. I think because of its resurgence, it became a popular person to research. But probably my favorite of those papers was a student that wrote about Stephen King and how his style developed from the late 70s into now, and kind of what his book, filmography in terms of book, what his library or catalog of writings has looked like, how his style has changed, his reception of film adaptations of his works. It was kind of a big overview, but it was very focused. It kind of used the new version, as kind of a foundation or a thread, and all the information about Stephen King kind of rotated around this new release of it, and it worked really well. So you can do kind of a biographical thing there. Another option, this one's probably been my favorite paper that any student has written for paper number 4. This has probably been my favorite student paper since I've been teaching this class. You can analyze a controversy within a genre of literature. So what this student did is she looked at Harper Lee, who was the author of To Kill a Mockingbird, which you probably read in high school. And several years ago, it was revealed that Harper Lee had a manuscript for the sequel to Kill a Mockingbird. She had in her possession a sequel manuscript she had worked on years ago, like decades ago, shortly after she released To Kill a Mockingbird. And when publishers found this out, they instantly wanted her to publish the sequel. They were like, "You're sitting on a gold mine, you'll make all this money." And Harper Lee at this point was quite elderly, and she did have some, she suffered from some mental disabilities because of her age, and a lot of critics were very upset with these publishers because these publishers were essentially like vultures. They were just surrounding her, constantly begging her day and night to release the manuscript, to publish the sequel. And a lot of critics at the time, as the student revealed in their paper, was that they were concerned that this was an elderly woman that these publishers were essentially exploiting and were taking advantage of just so they could make money off of her sequel, which, as the critics noted and as the student noted in their paper, she didn't publish it 40 years prior, probably for a reason. She probably didn't want to publish it. She just had the manuscript and was like, I don't know if I want to release it or not. And she just held on to it. She spent all that time writing that manuscript. It makes sense why she would hold on to it. But in the end, as the student wrote, the publishers won. And shortly before her death, she actually published Go Set a Watchman, which is the sequel to Kill a Mockingbird. And I have not read it, And as soon as I read this student's paper, I refused to read it because I do think it's exploitation. I think that they took advantage of an elderly woman and who was not in a stable mindset and published something that normally she would not have. And I've talked to people who have read the sequel and they can't stand it because one of the big points, I don't think it's a spoiler, but one of the points is that it talks about Scout's dad, Atticus Finch, and it makes to where he's not as wholesome a character as he was in To Kill a Mockingbird. And a lot of my friends were like, no, Atticus Finch is this, established, humane, innocent, pure figure, and Ghost Set a Watchman kind of ruins that for you. So they were like, don't read it. And I'm like, I won't. But you could do something like that. You could talk about a controversy within literature or film. There's a lot of controversy within film, just on a small scale or a big scale, that you could research and find out. But I really like the papers that center around a controversy or something controversial because I find you have a lot of information you can look at and that you can discover to research and add to your paper. So it works out pretty well if you choose this second option. But again, you may not find a controversy that you're interested in. Maybe you want to write about an author. Or maybe you want to research a piece of fiction, poetry, or prose, and maybe talk about how it's changed from one genre to the next. An example of this was I had when Batman vs. Superman came out. I had a student that was really unhappy about the film because he said that the comic book is so much different than what they ended up making the film, that he wanted to show kind of what the filmmakers missed out on and what they didn't do right. So he did a big giant compare and contrast where he talked about the original comic series and then Batman versus Superman. Their similarities, their differences, the public reception, why filmmakers didn't choose to adapt the original source material like they did. I mean, it was a pretty in-depth paper, but it worked out really well. You can do that too. We have so many examples that you can pick from. Illumination Studios, they're re-releasing The Grinch. And if you notice, Illumination also did The Lorax a few years ago. So something interesting might be, why does Illumination focus on Dr. Seuss? And how does translating poetry to film work? I've seen a lot of really cool analyses on The Lorax, and especially the newest version of it. And it's interesting, the differences in theme and in character and in genre between Dr. Seuss's work and the Illumination film. So there's that option. I will please point out, I know I said this for fiction, and some of you still did it. No Hunger Games. Please, I've read so many. Don't want to read about Katniss anymore. Also, with this third example, please don't make it a book report. Luckily, no one with paper one created a book report, and I was so happy. It made me feel so good. And what I mean by book report is I have had some papers in the past that chose this option here, and I will use Hunger Games as the example because it's been the most used example. I had a student where she was like, I'm gonna compare and contrast Hunger Games the book versus the movie, and I was like, okay. All it ended up being was she told me the plot of the book, and then she told me the plot of the movie and how it was similar and different, and that was it. I was like, it's a book report. Now I don't want to watch the third Hunger Games film because I already know the ending. You've spoiled and ruined it for me. So don't make if you choose this option here, I don't want to know just about plot. I want to know things like reception, like how it's been analyzed, like how the genre has changed, how reception has been. I want to know kind of the behind the scenes and the overall picture with your choices here if you choose this third option. I don't want to just know what the plot of the book and the film is. All right? Sorry, I went on a tangent on that one. And then you can do, this one kind of relates to this option here. You can do an extended analysis of a specific poem, piece of fiction, or play. It cannot be something you've done for a previous paper. So if you analyzed the Hunger Games for paper one, you can't do it for this paper. Another option that you can do is if you want to do the more creative writing option, if you want to creative write, you can create your own screenplay, or you can create your own set of poems and analyze them like we did for paper 2. Or you can do your own short story like what we did with fiction. You can do a creative writing option for this last paper. It just has to meet the formatting and page length that we'll talk about here shortly. But you're welcome to do that by all means. Just let me know, or if you have some out-of-the-box ideas, let me know too. I've had students in the past want to do a video, a video project, and video projects are hard. And so usually they'll get about a day or so into the assignment and be like, I think I'm going to write that paper rather than do a video. I've had one student do a video project since I've been teaching, and it was in a face-to-face class. Her and her friends did a screenplay and then acted it out. And then afterwards they talked about how much different it was acting out the screenplay than it was just writing it. And that was really cool. I wish I'd saved it. I would show you all, but it was a very cool project. It was one of the first paper number 4s that I ever had done, and it was very well constructed. But I mean, her and her friends created the video, and they did an exceptional job with it. But it was a lot of work. So if you're thinking about doing something like that, you're welcome to it, but just know that there's a lot of prep, timing, and planning to make it be executed well. All right. And step 3. This is usually the part where everyone goes, no matter what option you choose for this paper, the length is the same. All right, I'm going to brace you for this. It must be at least 8 pages long. 8. Okay. I'm going to let that sink in. I'm going to let you take a breath. Breathe. Don't hyperventilate. It's going to be all right. 8 pages long. It is by far the longest paper in our class, for good reason. This is kind of the culmination that we've been building towards. But I will be honest, you guys have around a month to write this paper, a little bit over a month. That's doable. If we've got 4 weeks and you did 2 pages a week, got it. Done. And you'll probably do more than 2 pages a week. So my big point about this page length is this is not the paper to procrastinate on at all. I really strongly encourage you. We're going to be doing the thesis in week 14, the thesis for your paper, the subject you're going to pick. Over Thanksgiving break, the only assignments are going to be the discussion forum and your outline. We'll talk about the outline in a minute. I would treat that outline very seriously, because it's going to be the structure of this final paper. And then the week after that is going to be doing the peer review of your paper, which we'll talk about shortly. And then the week after that's turning it in. So you've got as I create this video, you have over 4 weeks to get this paper done, which is plenty of time as long as you pace yourself and don't wait until the last minute. And we'll talk about how that won't happen, hopefully, a little bit below. But 8 pages, double-spaced, 12-point font, must have the following as I scroll down. The first thing it has to have is a detailed introduction paragraph where you explain your thesis and the goal of your paper as well as the points you're planning to address. So your introduction should have 3 parts, possibly 4. First, it should explain your thesis. What's the overall message? 2, what are the points of your paper? What are you going to talk about? 3, give a brief overview of the topic. So I know you say your thesis, but give a little bit of information. So if you're reviewing Stephen King, you might want to say what kind of books he's wrote. What has he been the author of? If you're talking about a TV show or a set of poems, you need to give a little background info so your audience isn't completely going in blind. And 4, you can state the goal or purpose of your paper. So your paper is about this. Here's your points. Here's the backstory. Why are you writing that paper? And don't put because it's paper 4 and I have to. You should be invested in your writing no matter what it is. So if you picked the Harper Lee controversy, that student said, you know, I feel, she was actually a social work major, so this was something that impacted her. She was like, you know, this impacts my career, that people were exploiting this elderly woman, that no one stepped in to stop the situation or to help remediate, or if they did, it wasn't successful. So she had a personal investment actually in that topic. And you, by all means, should have some kind of investment into this last topic. Whether it's, you know, like Batman versus Superman, it's something you're interested in. It's something like the Harper Lee controversy where her major, she was wondering, you know, why weren't these people involved? You should have some kind of investment in this last paper. It should be something that when you walk away from it, you're proud of it, you're ecstatic that you created something this lengthy and in depth. You know, this should be a point of pride that you have as a student that you created this last paper. So I hope that you have some kind of investment in it and that you can share that in your introduction. Part 2. You need to have a section after the introduction where you explain the controversy or explain a little bit more background info. So you know in your introduction you have background information that you talk about, but you don't want to give too much away, right? You want to leave a little mystery for your reader. Probably after your introduction you need to explain a little bit more about your topic, about the show, or about the book, or about the poems that you're discussing, just to give your readers more background information. And ideally, this section after your intro and your intro could take up a whole page altogether. So, you know, you've got at least a good foundation for your paper. At least 3 terms or 3 concepts need to be discussed. If you're doing fiction, they need to be 3 fiction terms. If you're doing drama, they need to be 3 drama terms. If you're doing poetry, they need to be 3 poetry terms. Now you can add extra terms where you talk about other genres. So if you're doing drama, you can add in some fiction terms or some poetry terms, but there needs to be at least 3 from the unit that you're discussing. Okay? And then if you have any questions about these terms or anything like that, you can always discuss them with me. At least 4 sources. And I'm going to go on here and highlight this. 4 sources. I told you we were going to be messing with MLA. This is the big one. You need to have 4 sources from your paper. Now one of those sources, one of them can be our textbook. So that should be an easy one. But then the other 3 sources need to be from somewhere credible. They can be from websites, they can be from books, they can be from YouTube videos, they can be from journals, magazines, from interviews. They can be from a variety of sources, but they need to be 4 text sources altogether that support your argument and support your paper. And you will notice Wikipedia is not an option. Wikis or about.com, WikiHows, however, if it's got wiki in the word, no. We talked about this in the MLA citation presentation, that if you're dead set on starting with Wikipedia as a platform to research, then you should go down to the bottom of the page and use the citations that Wikipedia is using. So as an example, I'll show you what I mean. If I go to Wikipedia, right, and let's just say I do To Kill a Mockingbird. Okay. You'll notice in a Wikipedia article they've got these little footnotes. Yeah, if I click on them, it takes me to the bottom of the page. These are all the sources that Wikipedia is citing. They are not an MLA, so don't cite what is here. It's just a link. But you can see, like here, like Susan Jolly, Integrating Poetry into Kill a Mockingbird, the English Journal. Yeah, I can click on this, and it takes me to a credible source. Alright? This is where I can find my citation. This is where I can cite my source. Okay? So if you're going to use Wikipedia as a researching tool, then go to the bottom of the Wikipedia page and find the citation there. And that's what you cite. Okay? Does that make sense? If not, email me and let me know. But that's what you need to be doing. is getting your sources from here if you're going to use Wikipedia. I would prefer you not use Wikipedia. I'd prefer you find your source from somewhere else. But if you include one of these, I will not count it as one of your 4 sources, and you will lose points. So don't do that. All right. This paper should be an analysis. It shouldn't just be a summary or a book report. It should include your opinions. It should include terminology. It should be a smart and resourceful college paper. And if you're doing something out of the box, obviously talk with me to make sure that you're doing the same effort and workload as people doing the actual paper. Works cited page and in-text citations are both required. Some of you have been doing the works cited page, but not the in-text citations. You need to have those. And then obviously if you're doing something out of the box, we'll have to discuss how we incorporate those sources and citations. You have a lot of resources at hand for MLA. You've got Purdue OWL, you've got your Cengage handbook, little slip, you've got the MLA presentation, you've got my video. There are so many sources and resources that you can use to learn to know how to cite that they're all right there for you. And if you have questions, you can feel free to ask me as well. All right, due dates. That's what y'all came for. Paper 4, the topic and thesis, is due Sunday, November 18th. The outline is due the Sunday following Thanksgiving, the 25th. The peer review and rough draft. And then before we get to that, so the outline. Some of you are doing awesome with the outline. You all are creating a nice structure of your paper. You're talking about the points you're going to discuss. Some of you, I don't know if you looked at the outline guidelines. I'm not sure if you looked at them or not. They are right up here in, let me get back to our page. They're right here in week 2, okay? And the outline guidelines show you kind of how to do an introduction paragraph, but you see this with the Roman numerals, your intro, and these things about the points. That's what I'm looking for with your outline. I want to see an introduction paragraph. I want to see your points. You don't have to include a conclusion if you don't have it yet. You can just put, work in progress. But they need to be similar to this, okay? That's what I'm going to look for with your final paper, is an outline that looks like this. And the outline for this paper is critical because this is a big paper, and it's a paper that I feel some students easily get lost in, and they need help, reconstructing or recreating it. So having this outline will help you navigate your paper so much easier than trying to just wing it, okay? And this outline shows me that you have a structure in place and you're not trying to write this paper the night before it's due, because this is not the paper to do that with, I assure you. All right, and then getting back to the guidelines, our peer review. So in this week before our final, instead of a regular discussion forum, by Friday, December 7th, you will need to post your draft into the discussion forum, okay? The draft of your paper. And my biggest piece of advice with this would be to write as much as possible, get as close to that 8-page deadline or due date or requirement for the discussion forum. In order to get full points, you need to be at least halfway there in your paper, so at least 4 pages in. And if you're at least 4 pages into your draft for the discussion forum, I won't count off any points. If you've got less than 4 pages, I'm going to count off some major points, because at that point you would have had 3 weeks to write on this paper. But my rule of thumb is the more content you have in this discussion forum, the more feedback you will receive. If you come at it with 3 pages, yeah, you're going to get some good peer review on 3 pages, but then you're going to have 5 pages that we've not even seen. So we don't get a chance to revise this last paper. So the discussion forum peer review is your chance to have your other classmates see your paper, give you feedback, but also it's your chance for me to see your paper and give you feedback as well. All right. So by Friday, you need to have paper 4's draft in the forum, and by Sunday, you need to have read at least 2 of your peers' papers and offered responses. Okay. And then our final draft of paper Number 4 is due in the Dropbox by Friday, December 14th at 11:55 p.m. This Friday due date is important because that is when our class ends. It is over. As Sir Robbie says in The Lion King, there is nothing left. If you turn your paper in on Saturday, I will not count it. I am required to shut the class off 11:55 p.m. on December 14th. I will not accept anything past that deadline. So please, some of you have been a little habitual on turning things in at the last minute or late, and this paper is worth a lot of points. So please, this is a grade changer. I've had students mess up with this last paper and go from a B to a C, like that. So I've also seen students do really well on this paper and go from a B to an A, like that. So please treat this paper seriously, treat this deadline seriously, because it's the worst feeling for me as an instructor when I set this due date and I have to go by it, because that's when all of our classes at SIC end, and every semester I have someone not turn it in on time, and it is gut-wrenching to me because I can't help you. I can't do anything about it at that point, and it will ruin someone's grade if you don't turn it in on time. So mark it in your calendars, put it in your phone, make a mental note. Just make sure you have that paper and that final exam in by Friday, December 14th at 11:55 p.m. Okay? I just can't stress that enough. So sorry if I got super serious there, but it happens every semester, and I want this to be the first semester that everybody turns their paper in on time. All right? As far as the paper grade breakdown goes, this is worth twice the amount of points as our previous papers because it's twice the length, it's twice the content. So your introduction and conclusion are each worth 10 points. The page length and formatting is worth 20 points. Spelling and grammar, there are 60 points devoted to, a lot of points devoted to spelling and grammar. The works cited in-text citations, works cited page is 20 points. The in-text citations are 20 points. This 40 points here is a big deal, so keep that in mind. And then your content and analysis, not a summary, is worth 60 as well, totaling 200 points. So it's a pretty big breakdown, but if you've been doing well on the papers so far in the class, this is just a longer version of that, so you should be fine. And then that's pretty much it. So if you have questions about paper 4 in terms of topic, in terms of what you're thinking about doing, please let me know. Week 15 will be the week of the outline, so we'll have a very brief video for that week. And then in week 16, we're going to be talking about the annotated bibliography, which is its own little assignment. And I'll have a whole video around Thanksgiving. I'll release that video and it'll talk about it. All right. So as always, if you have questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm excited about paper 4. It's my favorite paper. I feel like students do their best work towards the end of the semester, and I'm so excited to see what you all come up with. All right. Have a great evening, a great week, and I will talk to you all soon. Bye.